fellow booktubers, my name is Lauren, you're watching James Books Courage, and today we are going to be doing a bit of a different type of video, and I got this idea from Jillian over at Bookish and Nerdy. Basically what Jillian did is that she picked a few books off of her bookshelf that she's read and she talked a bit about them, and I think that that's a great idea. What I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to go down the list of books that I have read in alphabetical order, and within each Browse My Bookshelf video I'm going to be talking about 5 books. I feel like sometimes I don't give enough love to some of my books whenever I prefer others over them. So I think that this way you'll learn a lot more about my books instead of me just showing you them individually and just reading the titles and authors off of them and not really saying anything else about them. So I'm not sure how often I'm going to be doing the hashtag Browse My Bookshelf videos, but I'm really excited to get started, so let's go ahead and get into these 5 books. The first book you've probably heard me talk about if you've watched my March wrap up, and that is 21 Proms, which is by 21 different authors, but this was edited by David Levithan and David Ehrenhaft. And the reason I got this book was for a few different reasons. First, I think that this cover is beautiful, and also my prom was coming up, so I felt like it was better to read this now or I probably will never read it. And the third and probably most important reason as to why I bought this was because there's a short story in it by John Green, and I really just love owning anything that contains writing by John Green. I actually have a special shelf right here dedicated to all my John Green books, and this is on that shelf as well just because it has a short story by him. And it's really hard to give you a specific synopsis on what this is about because it is an anthology of a lot of short stories. But some of them are what you'd expect out of angsty proms where the characters don't have a date and they're really worried about it, and all they want is for a boy to ask them on a date to the prom, while others are about people banding together to do something that's completely unprom and they don't even go to prom whatsoever, and others are just weird or adorable. There's just such a wide array of short stories within this, so I definitely recommend you pick it up if you like pretty much any of these authors. They have a whole lot of really good authors in here, like Huckleberry, John Green, David Levithan. According to Goodreads, the exact date of whenever I read this book was March 28th of this year, and whenever I think about this book, I just think about my own 2 proms that I've been to and just the kind of experiences that I've had, and a lot of times whenever I was reading these stories, I was definitely comparing them to my own prom. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, and I really enjoyed it, but some of the stories were below average while others were amazing, so it's kind of hard to judge an anthology, but overall I thought most of the stories were 4 stars. The next book I'm going to be talking about, I also read it in the month of March, and that is 24 Girls in 7 Days by Alex Bradley. And I picked this book up so long ago that I don't even really remember whenever or why I picked this book up. Like, I'm pretty sure I was in junior high whenever I picked it up and I didn't really know what it was about, but it just sounded interesting because obviously if there are 24 girls involved, then there's a lot of different personalities in it, and I really like a diverse cast of characters, so that's probably why I picked this one up. This story is all about a guy named Jack Grammer and his journey to get a date to the prom. His friends actually put an ad out so then people will come and try to date Jack, and there ends up being a whole lot of entries, and then they narrow it down to 24 girls that he has to go on dates with within 7 days, and all this is leading up to prom. So it's just a very crazy situation of him going with all these different types of girls, and it's very interesting. I finished this book on March 27th, and whenever I think of it, I just think of all the books that I've had before, like whenever I was in junior high and everything, and how I've really had this book for so long. Before I read it, it's probably the one that's been on my TBR shelf for the longest amount of time. Personally, I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. Again, I really liked the diverse cast of characters that it had, and I had really low expectations set for this book whenever I decided to pick it up, but I really enjoyed it way more than I thought it would. I thought it was a pretty cute story, and although Jack didn't always make the best of decisions, I thought that it was really interesting to try to figure out these different mysterious elements of it, and there was a lot more to this book than I thought there would be. And this next novel, I'm not really sure if I've ever even mentioned it on my booktube channel, surprisingly, and that is An Abundance of Katherines by John Green. As you guys know, if you couldn't tell already, I love John Green. He is my favorite author, and so I have read all of his current books out, and this was one of the ones that I needed to read. And as you can see, this novel won a Printz Honor Award, and I usually enjoy Printz Award winners, so I was even more excited since this one had won a Printz Award. This is all about a guy named Colin, and he's dated 19 different girls named Catherine with a K, and he's like a prodigy whenever it comes to math, and he really just tries to put things in equations for his love life as well. He ends up joining his best friend on a road trip to this town in the middle of nowhere, and it's just really interesting to see their story unfold. I read this book about a year ago on March 18th of 2014, and I don't really have any specific memories of this book, but it is my least favorite John Green novel out of the ones that he has written by himself. And although this is my least favorite John Green book, I still give it 5 out of 5 stars because although it wasn't my favorite of his, it was still really good, and I thought the characters were really interesting and the story was pretty interesting, although I just kind of felt a lull that none of his other books had. But I felt like this book taught me quite a lot about different things, and it was just really interesting. And I felt like it was quite different from his other books as well, although the main character of Colin still kind of fit into the typical John Green mold of his main character. Overall, I would definitely still recommend that you guys read this book, but if you like reading books about prodigies or traveling especially, this is definitely the book for you. The next last book I'm going to be talking about today is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, and this is an old edition that I got for free from my English teacher because she was giving out a lot of her old books. But also, I read this for my English class earlier this school year in November, and I had pretty low expectations set for this book, but overall I really enjoyed it. This is all about a boy named Huck Finn, and he decides to run away because his father is just a very abusive father, and no one will really take him away from the society that he's put under, and so he just leaves it all together, and he ends up befriending a slave named Jim. And this is all about their trip down the Mississippi River on a raft, and they have a lot of misadventures along the way. And also throughout this book, Huckleberry Finn is really thinking about racism and if he really should be able to be friends with Jim because he is a slave and because he is black. And I felt like that had its own underlying story throughout this novel that was really interesting. I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars, and I really enjoyed it overall, although some parts I thought were a bit slow. But it was really interesting because it is an episodic novel, so it really just goes story by story, and that was really interesting to read. And also, a lot of this was really funny, and I didn't expect it to be as funny as it really was. And so if you guys want to read more classics but you're not really sure what to start with, then I would recommend this one just because it's an easier read, but it also has a lot of symbolism throughout it as well. And the final book I'm going to be talking about in this first episode of Browse My Bookshelf is Alysia, which is part of the summer collection of the Click series by Alysia Harrison. And as you can see, I'm definitely not leaving any book out of this list because this is in the middle of the Click series. And as you guys probably know, I really enjoyed the Click series whenever I was in junior high, and I've read all the books, and there's like 20 in all. But this is one of the main girls of the Click, and this is just a summer story of her life. This is about Alysia visiting her family in Spain and possibly starring in a music video. I don't remember exactly whenever I read this book because it was so long ago, but it was probably between 6th and 7th grade. I ended up giving this book 3 out of 5 stars because I didn't really enjoy the summer collection of the Click girls. I felt like it was very unnecessary, although I did end up reading all of them anyways. I would say that really Massey is the main one who makes it the Click, and so I didn't really want to hear about the other girls as much. Like, I can deal with quite a bit of them, but I didn't really want a whole book dedicated to their own stories just for the summertime. Whenever I think about this series at all, I just think about my junior high self and how much I've grown up since then, and also how these books have really influenced me and my confidence level. So I wouldn't really recommend you read the summer collection of the Click, but I think that overall the Click is a great series to read. If you're into fashion or you're into like the Mean Girls movie, that kind of reminds me of this, but I definitely think at least the first book of the Click series is definitely worth the read. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I would really love to know if you're enjoying this type of video and if you want to see me do any more of these. Also, I'd love to know your thoughts on any of these books if you have read any of them. Now I'm going to go get back to reading.